Hello everybody, welcome today to our webinar where you will hear about how you can actually boost your law firm revenue by using some of the very well-known new law sales methods. And today I'm joined by John Grimley, who is the expert in law firm sales pipelines. John, could you please introduce yourself briefly before we start?
Sure, Ivan. This is John Grimley. I'm an American lawyer by training, and I developed an expertise in law firm sales pipelines going back to the last decade when, in 2002, I established and directed the European Representative Business Development Office for U.S. AmLaw 100 law firm, Patton Boggs LLP. Patton Boggs is now part of Squire Patton Boggs, but at that time, the firm had no overseas offices except in Doha. And I now currently advise professional services firms around the world in business development and marketing.
Thank you, John. That certainly sounds impressive. And myself, my name is Ivan, as you can see, and I'm formerly practicing attorney, formerly in-house, an in-house legal team, and now nowadays founder and the CEO of LegalTrek. Now, this is what is on our agenda today. Let me break it a little bit for you. So first, we're going to speak about some key terminology used in this presentation. So we make sure we are all on the same page. Next, in the part one, we are going to talk about some basics about setting up and structuring the sales team. Of course, we're going to talk some positioning first, and we're going to talk about what kind of results you can expect after a while of having this team running in practice. In the part two, John is going to tell you more in depth and specifically about what does he mean by law firm sales pipelines, what do these consist of, and how these can actually help you boost your law firm revenue. And also we are going to talk briefly about some content commercial strategy that you can use to attract and actually create more business, not just get, but also create more business for you. And of course, in the end, we are going to, in the closing remarks, we are going to give some examples of these methods that we are mentioning today, how these are used in practice. We are going to run in the end into the Q&A mode where you can ask us anything by either using the chat box or by tweeting it via Twitter, and we're going to mention what you can expect from us in the follow-up. So let's begin. Before we dive in, as I mentioned, we are going to have a Q&A session in the end. However, you can feel free to live tweet any questions and comments that you have as we go along. And you can use a NewLaw hashtag and the Twitter handles Asia Law Portal for mentioning John, or LegalTrek for mentioning myself, depending on to whom you are directing a question. We encourage you to do this live tweeting, and especially because we have two awards for you today. For the most active Twitterati, we are going to have a special award which I'm going to announce in the end. And of course, in the follow-up, you're going to each of you is going to you're going to learn if you got this award, which is essentially additional consultation. Okay. So just an example of a question that you can pose and how you can pose it on Twitter. For example, if you want to ask John, you can just mention his Asia Law Portal Twitter handle and say, hey, how can we do this in our smaller teams, hashtag NewLawEdo. Great. Sounds perfect. So let's just dive in with first some of the terminology parts. We mentioned Big Four and we're going to mention it, and I think this is pretty clear and there is no additional explanation needed. Big Four are simply also known as the accountants, the big brand names, accountants and audit firms which are positioned globally. Why they're also relevant to us today? Well, they also have their eyes on the legal market, as well as it is evidenced by some of the former recent joint ventures and initiatives between some of the Big Four and law firms in the legal space. I wrote more about it. I can send you some of the articles, but I'm sure you're also well informed of these initiatives. Next, what is the new law? Well, honestly, we can better define new law, but by what it isn't. So I'm also here relying on the definition given by George Beaton and Jordan Furlong, which is essentially a negative definition in a sense. George Beaton says what new law isn't. So new law isn't anything like the big law business model, so it's something completely new. On the other hand side, Jordan Furlong says, lacking any other systematization, that new law is essentially any model that represents significantly different approach to the delivery of legal services today. So this really gives us a wide array of what a new law can be. On one hand side, it can be a law firm applying significantly different business models than traditional partnership structure and a pyramid. On the other hand side, it can be also a company which uses legal process outsourcing to connect the customers, the buyers, and also the lawyers who actually deliver legal services. So please, when we speak about new law, you can think about companies rather than law firms most of the time, as it is evidenced by current practice. Now, going further, if you're talking about inbound and outbound initiatives, let's just in a sentence explain what are these, because now we are diving into some of the sales terminology as well. Essentially, inbound activity means actually working and processing any lead that come to us with some specific need already formed in mind. Now, what stage are they in? This is something different, but the essence is that actually the contact, the customer, the prospect came to us with a specific question, and then it's up to us to negotiate and get them into buying our legal services. Okay, whereas outbound is essentially the opposite of inbound activity. We actually are reaching out to our potential target group in order to actually determine at all if there is any need that we can fulfill with our services. Okay, moving on. Buyer's journey. Now, buyer's journey is something very important for any company that is selling something, some goods or services, and I feel it is the same for law firms. And essentially, if you're thinking about buyer's journey, think about a framework or a way of thinking that you actually follow a buyer, how they progress through various psychological stages which ultimately lead them to a purchase. And roughly speaking, what can these stages actually be? These stages are, we can talk about the awareness stage as a first, where a buyer is aware that they may or may not at this moment have some need. Maybe this awareness is still not fully formed. Next, when they are fully aware of the need they are having at hand, we can talk about consideration stage, where they consider different options to fulfill that need. And finally, final stage, it's the actual purchase. Once they have arrived and identified the right way to fulfill the need, or let's say the right vendor whom to buy from, they will go into the purchase stage. Okay, so why is buyer's journey important for any company, law firms included? Well, simply, if you're reaching out to your target customers, you should actually expect that you will be meeting them at their different stages of such journey. So you should be able to recognize by some comments they give, some questions they have, what stage they're actually in, and then you can further their journey through these stages by, I don't know, providing some useful content on your end, providing some guidance, answering some helpful questions to lead them to recognizing the right need and going into the purchase mode. Okay, great. So moving on. Let's start with the essence and the part one, where I'm going to touch a little bit on positioning. on the key functions of a sales team, and finally what kind of activities they usually have, and what is the outcome after a certain while. So speaking about positioning, this is very important because if you set yourselves to build a sales team that is going to go outbound, you first really need to nail down your positioning and of course your focus group before you actually start reaching out and projecting your message. So why is this important? Let's be honest. I mean, there are so many websites over there, so many LinkedIn profiles of law firms which spell out we are a full-service commercial law firm or we are a boutique commercial law firm. Honestly, that doesn't say much about you and what do you do and how you actually help customers. Now, if you are really honest, this is not positioning because it doesn't tell me anything about you without actually asking you some additional questions. Okay, so this is not positioning, and there is something else you can try instead. But what? So you can ask yourselves these 3 very helpful questions. Start with this, like what do you do yourselves? And second, how do you help your customers? And the third question is, so what? Or what is so great about that, about what you do? And let me illustrate with one very specific example. Let's imagine we have an accountant from Los Angeles, and we meet them for the first time, and we just say, okay, great, so what do you do? And I would say, well, I'm an accountant in Los Angeles. Okay, so how do you actually help your customers? And accountant would say, or myself, I would say, I help businesses stay compliant. And then you can go like, okay, so what? I mean, what's so great about that? What does this mean at all? And then I will expand, well, you know what, if a business is not compliant in certain areas, etc., they can face huge fines that can be measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So actually what I do, I have businesses stay in compliance so they have zero risk of such fines. Aha! So see how we actually got, with the help of these 3 subsequent questions, from what to the aha moment, where actually we realize what is the true value that you provide. Okay? So try to ask yourselves this question. And once you get to the aha moment, you should really consider using this. Of course, you can try it out. You can change and over time, but you can really actually use that as a positioning instead of simple full service law firm or boutique law firm. Okay. So to move on, let's talk about the key functions in the sales team. If we are going to speak about how to structure the sales team, we can speak about the basic functions as the prospector, the outbound executive, and finally the expert. So let me explain. Now the prospector, after you have nailed down your positioning and got to the aha moment, and of course in this process you also know who is your target customer, now you actually need to reach out to your target audience. Yes, you need somebody who is going to dedicate their time in researching, finding leads, and actually just putting on the list of your target customers that you're going to reach out to and try to identify if they have a need that you can fulfill. Okay, so this is what a prospector function does. They're finding the actual contact details of your target customers, or as I said here in the slide, it's an opportunity finder, and usually it doesn't only put on the details but also adds some pre-qualification where we are checking are those leads that we found really in our target with the back of the napkin analysis. If it's obvious they're not, well, obviously we're not going to contact them because they don't fall in our target group. Now next, after you have your good lists of good targeted leads, you are going to have an outbound executive, or if you want a caller, or if they're reaching out via phone, they can also be reaching out via email, of course, or a combination of both. And the goal of this outbound executive is to reach out to as many on a daily basis from this list that your prospector generated, and to set appointments with your expert, okay, who is going to finally do a full qualification, which means fully and in-depth understand the business needs of these prospects, and where it makes sense to close them, or rather to sign them up for your legal services, and of course after the sales to manage finally the relationship and make sure that the customer has been served on all the points correctly and promptly. Now, whether the expert finally also renders these services, this is another question. You can play either way around. There is also one thing that I want to mention here. Now, we did mention three functions: the prospector, outbound executive, and the expert. But have in mind that I use the terminology functions deliberately, because you can have these different functions spread between three different people. So essentially structuring your team and strictly setting, like boundaries of who is going to do what. So you have only a person dedicated to prospecting, a person dedicated to reaching out as an outbound executive, and finally the expert. Or these functions can actually be joined in one person. Like one person can do these functions. Essentially, if this is the case, like for example, and John will give some examples as well, but if for example you can use one of the days of a week, if you identify one of the days of the week as not really good for calling company executives and reaching out to them, like usually a Monday is a bad day in most sales experience, but not always it has to be a case. It depends also on the industry. But let's say you take Monday for simply prospecting, for putting on the lists that you're going to be executing yourself along the way on other business days of the week. And finally, you can also be an expert, which of course takes some of these appointments that you set, or you can have another person joining you and helping you with the full qualification. I'm mentioning this now because there is usually a question when we speak about sales teams. There is sometimes a question saying, okay, we understand big firms having lavish budgets and infrastructure and manpower, and they can structure sales teams and scale them up the way all the way they want. Okay, yes, but I also, and I'm telling from my personal experience, I saw in practices law firms with no more than 10 people actually having 2 or even 1 person dedicated to these functions and actually executing on this strategy. Okay, so this strategy can work for both smaller and bigger firms. It depends how you're going to structure it. But again, this is this is a question also of your priorities too. Now, talking about the goals of your sales team. Talking about the goals of your sales team, the goal is to reach out as many potential customers in your target group and to identify a need that you can serve and that you can close as well. Basically, what after a while of applying this strategy and executing, you can actually have some measurable data which you can analyze and see if you're doing all the things right or not. And let me just show a brief illustration just as an example. So let's imagine you had your prospectors reaching out to a certain number of people. And they have lined up, rather prospectors, they made a huge lists, and this is the top of the funnel here, as you can see in the red color. And then you had your outbound executives reaching out to them. And of course, not everybody after some pre-qualification, full qualification falls into the target that you should be working on right now, or maybe they're not at the right stage of the buyer's journey. They're maybe not still aware of the needs they have. So of course you'll be putting a reminder for yourself to contact them again. So, but the point is in the middle part of the funnel. The middle part of the funnel actually represents those appointments that you have actually set for your experts and who are uptaking this. And finally, your experts are able to close not the whole number of appointments due to various reasons, but usually this number will be less. Then after a few weeks or months or whatever, after some period, you can go back and if you trace all this data, historically, you can simply learn what are the conversion rates between each of the stages and see what you can do to optimize them and have more business in. The point finally and the end result of this is you are having with this a predictable strategy which yields you predictable revenue. After a while you will realize what you can do to increase the number of sales. Does it mean that does it pay for you to hire more people for the sales team, or actually does it pay more for you to scale down, or maybe you need to optimize before doing anything else? Okay, so John has briefly lost the connection, but he's back with us right now, and I would say right on time. John, let me just see. Yes, we are up to right now in the part 2, in your part, so I'm going to unmute you, and please do take over, where we are going to talk about specifically law firm sales pipelines.
Thanks, Ivan. I think the thing to keep in mind here for anyone who works in a traditional law firm is that you can create a law firm sales pipeline around being in the commercial market where your clients are. So if you're a law firm operating, whether domestically or internationally, look at the business trends in your marketplace and determine what it is that you want to sell to your potential clients. And it really depends on what are the most important things that are to them. So a law firm sales pipeline essentially consists of the research component, which is researching along with the expert practitioners in your firm, opportunities, commercial opportunities in most cases that exist for your potential clients, and then the outreach component, which is the component where you are then distilling down into saleable components what it is you want to sell to the potential client and reaching out to them via email or phone. This helps law firms by taking law firms out of the traditional hyper-competitive tender process for work amongst a group of firms tendering for work with the general counsel. What law firm sales pipelines help you do is for you to not just be looking for existing legal work that the general counsel is already tendering for, but to literally be creating legal work around the proprietary knowledge and information that your firm will have about your market that is of significant value to your potential clients. Many corporations don't have a depth in commercial staff that allows them to know or be aware of commercial opportunities that might exist in your market for, let's say, for them to tender for government contracts, for them to make an acquisition, for them to enter your market under favorable trade or investment terms. The list can go on and on and on, and the legal service that you sell as the tip of the spear to get into the client always, in my experience of being in thousands of these meetings, ultimately leads into discussions of a whole host of other legal issues or needs that a client might have, as well as it leads you into being able to cross-sell your legal services not only to those new clients that are coming in as a result of the outbound pipeline you're conducting, but also it provides you with the actionable commercial intelligence that you can then use to cross-sell all of your other legal services to existing clients. So you're not trying to then cross-sell or outbound sell your legal services as much as you are trying to be a commercial partner and advisor first to your potential clients, which I can tell you from experience, the CEOs and the GCs and the C-suite of companies really appreciate. Commercial-oriented content strategy means, for example, writing about the things that are of most commercial use to your ideal potential client base. Let's say you're a law firm in Singapore or a law firm in Europe, and you're aware that there are investment trends coming toward your market from, let's say, China investors into the European Union, let's say European Union investors into the Southeast Asia region. Create content around actionable commercial intelligence that exists in those markets that your ideal potential client base in those markets will look at and say, hey, I want to know that firm because they're writing about things that are very useful to me. Then use the content that you're writing about to have your outbound sales representatives actively contacting the C-suite executives, including the general counsels, and also the commercial staff within corporations that might be ideal potential clients for you, as well as potential referral sources. But really, the sales pipeline is all about you being very focused on.
Hello, John. I think we lost you again at the moment. Can you help tuning back in? Hello, John. Okay, so while John tunes back in and continues with how you can actually use commercial content to your benefit and provide some examples, I can add on with some of the examples that I had from my point of view, which I was leaving for the end of this conversation, but actually I can present them now. So without further ado, how does NewLaw sell? And in particularly using these strategies that we've been talking about right now. So I've been contacted by one of the companies from United States that aggregate, on one hand side, the market for legal services, meaning different attorneys. On the other hand side, they let end users pitch their services and put actually projects for which attorneys would later on bid. So how this works is I had a specific legal project coming along, but it was somewhere in the back of my mind because it was not that urgent. So again, you can argue that I was in some starting stage of my buyer's journey. I was kind of aware of the problem coming along, but I was still not even considering options to solve it because I knew I had more time to solve it. It was not due for tackling for, let's say, a month or two, which was plenty of time given the small scope of the project. So what happened? I started receiving in my mailbox, of course, in my email inbox, messages from this company, which we can definitely argue is a part of the NewLaw group that we spoke in the beginning, if we remember the Jordans and George's definition from the start. So they started emailing me occasionally with their value proposition, with their pitch. Hey, we will help you if you have any legal work. We can help you dramatically cut costs on your legal work, etc., etc. So I was ignoring these messages for a while. As I said, at the time I was not still aware. Well, I was aware of the problem, but I was still not considering solving it. So I was still not there. But they kept sending emails occasionally with a, let's say, a consistent and regular follow-up sequence. Up until at some moment I realized that, well, my project is coming due, and I have two options. I have an option to start researching all the options how I can solve it myself, on one hand side, and on the other hand side, these guys were already top of my mind, given all the messages they have been sending. Even though I was ignoring them, I was not even answering at the time, I have to be honest. Again, I'm mentioning the scope of my project was not that big. It was rather, let's say, kind of template project that anybody could handle, and these guys were already there. So I said to myself, okay, why not? Let's contact them. Obviously, they know what they're doing, what they're talking about. So let's give them a try. I have nothing to lose. I can simply just go. If it doesn't work with them, I can do the same thing I will do anyways. Researching contacts that I know in the United States who can help me resolving my legal project. Yeah. So briefly after I replied back, we had a very short Skype conversation where they presented the methods they're using, answered any additional questions, and there I was sold. I was sold due to all the value they provide, but also the convenience of such an approach, and it saved me not only the legal costs, but also a vast amount of time that I would otherwise use on researching possible and comparing possible options to resolve this issue. So this actually, if we just analyze their approach from the very beginning, we can say they have started their outbound campaign. First of all, they have identified me as somebody who is in their target. Afterwards, they have started sending their emails as a part of their email campaign with a engineeringly precise follow-up sequence and persistence. And after myself, I have reached a certain stage of my buyer's journey, I turned back to them, and then they followed up with the next stage in their sales process, which was setting an appointment and having an appointment and then closing the deal. So this is what NewLaw is doing today. And this is not a science fiction. This is something that companies have been doing for decades, if not even centuries. But you can argue that, this is a plain vanilla sales process, which of course can be tailored differently depending on the industry, depending on your target customers and everything, of course. But the end point is that the NewLaw is using these methods, and these methods are giving them predictable projection of revenue for the next period, as opposed to simply sitting down and wait to be found online, or to be met and approached on some dinner party and traded cards and eventually follow up to close with the business. So this is the power of this outbound approach. First of all, structured. Second, of course, proactive. And then this will help you, of course, with the right positioning and the pitch. It will help you generate new businesses. So I'm just going to check briefly if I managed to get John. John is back with us. Hello, John. Can you hear us?
I can.
Great, John. So I was just filling in while you came back. So can you please pick up where you left last time?
What did you hear me say last?
So you were saying actually how commercial content can be used to the benefit of law firms. This was the last point that I remember, and then we lost you.
Sure. I mean, basically, if you're going to be doing a content strategy, you want to write content that has a direct commercial appeal to your target audience. And then you want to use that content to not just produce content that you're going to put out on social media channels. You want to directly use that content in emailing potential clients and asking them if they would be willing to have a conversation, or they'd be interested in having a conversation with you about the subject. Now, if the content is written around subjects that are of unique commercial appeal to your audiences, to your ideal potential clients, it makes it much easier to use it as a tool to open the door. So you should be completely aligning your content strategy with your outbound sales effort. They should be working hand in glove together all the time.
Okay, John, that sounds great. Can you maybe think of some examples from practice, applying the strategy and how it works for them?
Sure. What I would say is, if you're in a business-focused law firm, and let's say hypothetically you're operating in one country, let's say you're in Singapore or you're in the European Union, think about what are the things that your ideal potential corporate client's going to be most interested in your jurisdiction. Let me give you, one hypothetical. If you are a law firm in the European Union and you happen to be able to advise firms on mergers and acquisitions, or let's say European Union public procurement, write about those subjects on a regular basis and make them as specifically tailored as possible to the potential client base you're going to contact. And let's say, for example, you're aware of specific programs in the European Union that have specific applicability to specific sectors. So narrow it down, write very narrowly on those subjects, and then use that content to then open the door with the C-suite of those companies and get talking about how you can help them utilize your services to secure public sector contracts in the EU, which is a huge market in and of itself. And then once you have them as a client, and during the process, if they do sign you as a client, see if they won't sign you to an exclusivity agreement where you're doing all of their legal work within the European Union. And this is particularly apropos right now in Europe because there's significant inward investment coming from Korea, China, and elsewhere into the EU. So vice versa, if you're in the Asia Pacific region, many European companies are actively investing into Southeast Asia in particular. Write about things that are happening that are going to be most useful to those potential clients. And then once again, do exactly what I said in the opposite. Go straight at those European companies in the C-suites, send them the content that you're producing, ask them for a meeting, ask them for a phone conversation, and begin the direct one-on-one conversations with their C-suite about how you can help them enter that market. And you'll be very surprised. There'll be much more of an interest in talking to you if you have their commercial interests in mind. And oftentimes the things you're writing about, they won't know about because they won't have the commercial staff that deep to go that deep into this. And where do you work with your sophisticated practitioners in this effort? The lawyers in your firm have tremendous proprietary knowledge about what's going on in those markets. This is the one big advantage that traditional law firms have over new law. You need to utilize it. This is one place where I constantly see traditional law firms, except with rare exceptions, not doing this thing, matching their proprietary knowledge with potential client opportunities, and then actively, proactively contacting those potential clients as a means by which to begin the discussion around representation and remuneration. There's much more to it, though, about how to conduct these meetings, how to keep the process moving, how to negotiate terms of engagement, et cetera, but this is the basic outline of what you need to be doing in the first instance, and very few traditional firms do this.
Sounds great, John. Thanks for sharing this. So further to this, we are reaching the end of our presentation today. Well, here was the segment of what I plan to speak about my new law example, which I already told you, so we're not going to go there. So straight from here, we can go to the Q&A. Any question that you have for John, any question that you have for John or me, feel free to write it now, or to tweet it as we said as well in the beginning. Let's see. So there was a question coming from Allard. There was a question coming from Allard about, John, I'm going to spell the question and you can take it. I think this is a good question for you. So the question was, how actually can small firms, or if we call them understaffed firms, apply the strategy that you just spoke about?
That's a great question. I've worked with a lot of elite boutique law firms to help them adopt basically the essential components of a sales effort within their own firm. You can utilize your administrative and professional staff and some of your associate attorneys in some cases to do research around what commercial opportunities exist for potential clients, and then in some cases conduct outbound efforts on the basis of contacting prospective clients, and then at the appropriate time bring in the practitioners into the conversation once you already know that the potential client is someone you want to be talking to. You've done a conflicts check, you've talked to the practitioners, and they've said no, they're fine to contact, and then the firm has evinced an interest in retaining your services. Once that happens, it's then appropriate to bring in a practitioner, a senior level lawyer in the firm, to participate in a meeting over phone or in person around representation and remuneration. So a small firm can put together this operation even if you're somewhat understaffed.
Okay, great. Thanks for this answer. Now, moving on with questions. The question was from Jan. Can we talk about a little bit about key account management in law firms? Where are there threats and gaps in implementation? Are there any threats and gaps in implementation of key account management in law firms? Should key account management in law firms be coherent with the sales strategy, or should it be developed independently? So yeah, you can start with the overview of key account management as a function in law firms, John, and then we can develop in the followed questions.
Sure. I mean, look, a key account management is basically a cross-selling operation, and that is usually about as sophisticated as traditional firms get, even the large global firms. Absolutely, a key account management discipline should 100% be integrated into the outbound sales effort. What you're doing in cross-selling to existing clients in the key account management system is exactly what you should be doing when you're doing your outbound sales to new prospective clients. Bringing your existing clients highly commercially valuable and actionable information which they will see as very helpful to their interests. And when they see that from their counsel, it'll be a surprise. It'll be a very happy surprise. And the thing that's most important about this is when you do this as a firm, you're taking yourself out of the hyper-competitive head-to-head tender process for existing legal work that many firms are spending millions and millions of dollars to gain marginal competitive advantage in the tender process for work with the general counsel's office. This discipline has to be fully integrated with the key account discipline, should be done constantly. You should be reviewing your leads with the director of outbound business development on a weekly basis at minimum, and every day should be spent identifying prospective clients and the opportunities, going after the potential clients to secure meetings, discussing representation, remuneration, repeat and keep going and keep the process going, and align it completely with the key account process. Because instead of selling your legal services on a cross-selling basis, you should be bringing new, actionable, valuable information to your prospective clients first. And so the issue of your legal services will be the later question. And that's what you want to be doing with prospective clients. You want to be their commercial partner. You want to be a strategic advisor first during the sales process.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. So I'm taking the questions in the sequence these arrive. So if you post the question, it will be answered. Don't worry. So next, Justinas asks, do you have the experience with law firms using outsourced providers for making calls to potential clients or organizing meetings. So I'm guessing before we answer here, the question is about using the so-called call centers to outsource the first line of calling. John, if you have any thoughts of this, please, you can take it. And I will also add some of the points that I have from my experience about these call centers. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally have not worked with outbound call centers. I have done all of the work we've talked about today myself personally. When I was with Blogs, I worked with a team of 11 people who were essentially engaged in the identification, pursuit, and capture of new business in global markets. Subsequently, I have worked for primarily elite boutique law firms in Europe, the United States, and in Asia, where I have personally, essentially, and also Latin America, I have personally acted as an outside consultant to the firm where I personally do the business development for the firm. I do exactly what I just described I do. I identify the potential clients. I reach out and I contact those potential clients. I engage in initial discussions with those clients. I then bring in the practitioners at the point at which time it is appropriate to have conversations with the potential client and the law firm. And I've done that with elite boutique law firms. I've helped them sign state-owned enterprises in foreign markets for assistance in their own domestic markets. So I've worked for elite boutique law firms to sign very, very large clients on a cross-border basis. And so I can't say that I would or would not recommend a call center because I've always done it by myself or with a team of dedicated professionals who are within a law firm if it's a larger law firm.
Thanks, John. So I will add my points, Justinas, to this question about the so-called call centers. Now, I can understand the appeal of call centers as someone that you want to outsource the first step to. Some of the, obviously the value is that they can be focused full-time. They have the professionalism and the training, general training from call centers. They are grinding these kind of activities day in and day out. So this is clear. On the other hand side, you should have in consideration the fact that you still need to spend time with them. Educating them about your offering, about your value propositions, about your target group, about everything essentially that your prospector from your in-house team would know. And on the other hand side, you should define the success very well. What I mean by this, usually, I'm not saying this is the case for all the call centers, but the one I know, usually they have a business model which charges you per appointment set, which means you have to be very careful how do you actually define who qualifies for an appointment, so you don't make an incentive for them to schedule you thousands of appointments of low qualified, let's say, prospects, which again you need to spend your time working with, to qualify them, or maybe you see they don't bring you any value. So I wouldn't go pro or con call centers. I just wanted to share this from our experience, just to have this, in mind before working with call centers. Okay, good. So next question comes from John, and John asks, first his comment. In other industries, sales are separated from marketing, separated from pricing, and separated from those who actually do the work. Yeah, cool. Question. Does John see any advantage and any trends in the legal profession in separating the sales role from the legal skills delivery role? John?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Patent Dogs, we had a dedicated outbound business development effort, which was completely separate from the practice of law. I am a trained lawyer, but I was not practicing law when I was operating the European Representative Business Development Office for AmLaw 100 law firm Patent Dogs, and I was not practicing law when I was working on behalf of my clients in Asia, Latin America, the United States, and the European Union to operate a sourced sales pipeline for them. essentially that is what NewLaw and the Big Four do. And that is why we put this webinar together, because NewLaw and the Big Four are very aggressively taking more and more market share from traditional law firms. And I believe the reason why they're doing that is not because the legal market is shrinking. The legal market is expanding throughout the world. Just today, Thomson Reuters had a report talking about how last year was the biggest year on record for M&A globally. And Professor Wilkins at Harvard has made the same comment about how law firms should get outside into the world and capture clients. The reason law firms are shrinking and losing market share is because they are thinking through the same parameters that they've thought about for years and years and years. Look at the general counsel, think about existing legal needs that are being tendered for by the general counsel. What we're suggesting is emulate NewLaw, emulate BigLaw, have a dedicated sales force, but utilize the proprietary information that only large law firms have and go after clients on the basis of appealing to their commercial interests by having actionable commercial intelligence that is generated from an internal team of people who know how to do this research. And the research is also going to be done in consultation with elite practitioners who are going to have the proprietary information that only they will really have access to. So this is a place where traditional law firms can definitely claw back market share from from the Big Four and from NewLaw.
Thanks, John. Following the question from Jan, who says, John, many thanks for answering his key account management question. Now the subsequent question, where do you see the greatest gaps in implementing key account management and other sales initiatives? Are the partners still the bottleneck?
The answer to that question is, from my observation, just my personal observation, I think the answer is yes. I think the traditional law firms, from everything I've read, from everything I've observed, the traditional partnership model is not adapting quickly enough. And there is still a perception within BigLaw that legal work is generated primarily through tendering for that work at the general counsel's office in a competitive tender process with the general counsel. And that has got to change if BigLaw is going to compete effectively in a modern marketplace where not only are all kinds of NewLaw law firms generating work for themselves and eating into market share, but the Big Four, as we mentioned. So unless, in my opinion, large law firms, traditional law firms change, there's only so many mergers and so many, so much business that can be bought, in the markets. That is really not an effective means to generate sustainable growth. The way you sustain growth is to put together an effective, sophisticated research and sales team. And this is fundamentally what traditional law firms are going to have to do to survive in the future.
Okay, thanks, John. And we have a question from Ivo, who asks you directly, in case of bar association prohibition to apply aggressive, example calls, client approaches, what could be the strategy here? Please advise. Now, I have a cool story to share about this, but of course, John, you can take this point of view first if you have something to add. Thanks.
I would just say in the case of bar regulations that my advice would be to always follow bar regulations, absolutely, unquestionably. I am personally not familiar with bar regulations which prohibit any type of new business development effort on an outbound basis. The only restrictions that I've understood might be in place might be for the way that new clients that are generated from a sales effort would be in terms of compensation for the sales force, how that compensation might be created. I happen to be an attorney, so I have worked creatively with boutique law firms to create remuneration structures on the basis that it was compliant with local bar regulations in any case I ever did it. But I think the fundamental question is you've got to look at your local bar regulations and make a determination as to whether or not whatever you're doing is compliant with those bar regulations. But I would say that in that, a firm like Patton Boggs did this, and that Baker and McKenzie does it, and that DLA Piper does it, there's certainly a way you can find to do it that is ethical and within the bounds of bar regulations.
Absolutely, and thank you, John, for this. So I want to add some of my points and share some stories with this regard, Ivo. So during one of the conferences in Scandinavia, I met a partner who actually, was operating in Scandinavia. And I'm not going to be mentioning any names, of course. And I'm also, like John, going to advise you to always follow and be compliant with the, bar association rules. But just a story about what this guy did. So he at the same time was leading his law firm. And on the other hand side, he has, I believe specifically due to these issues that you mentioned here, he set up a separate vehicle. Was it an LLC or some other form? I'm not aware. So this separate vehicle was actually, its primary role was this. To execute a strategy and to identify the potential opportunities for his law firm. Now, how was he later approaching them? Was this special vehicle also making an introduction to the law firm, and then it will be considered as an inbound strategy or a networking strategy for the law firm? I'm not sure. I'm not certainly aware of the details, but obviously it was working for him at the time, and this meeting was 2 years ago or so. He was happy with the results. Now, let this not be a lone example. You probably heard of ClearSpire. They're not operative anymore. But ClearSpire in the United States, essentially, and I wrote about this, I can send you some of the articles. It's pretty cool. ClearSpire actually had two components. So one component was related to the legal service delivery, and it was, of course, a separate vehicle with a traditional American Bar Association compliant model, let's say, for law firms. And the other vehicle was, again, it was a company, was it LLC or whatever other form, and it used the same strategy. They were exploring the market, doing market research, positioning, marketing, just to support their legal service delivery unit. And as far as I know, they went under, they stopped operating. Nowhere was it reported that they stopped operating because of the breach of any compliance rules from American Bar Association. It was it's also reported from the founders, but also from the pundits in the industry, that the reason for them to stop operating was that they didn't generate enough of the business to just justify moving on. So I hope, Ivo, this answers your question, and I can send some materials in the follow-up. Okay? Super. Great. So there is one, but this is a general question left, and I think it doesn't require any answers now. It's just a request for you and me, John, to share in the aftermath of this webinar some good, interesting content for law firms, and we will certainly do that, and absolutely we'll be happy to do so. And speaking of the aftermath, let me just move on and just mention, well, first of all, to thank all of you for taking from your very valuable time to spend with John and me today and to chat on this extremely interesting topic. Just a few more words, and I promise to let you go. So what you can expect from us right now after this webinar is you will get an email, follow-up email, or with a video with the link to the video to this webinar, so you can revisit it at any time and share, of course, with friends that you feel can benefit from it. And of course, as our attendees, you have the benefit to be the first ones to get your copy of our ebook, Attracting New Clients, which reinforces some of the principles that me and John spoke about today, but also sheds light on some other points of view. And of course, we're going to keep you in the loop with invitations to any other subsequent webinars that we are going to have planned. Now, of course, if you have, of course, you're also going to have access to these slides, so you're going to have the full materials as well. We are going to announce, of course, in this follow-up email as well, who of you won the prizes that we mentioned in the beginning. And just to mention what is the prize, we have two prizes. So it is a consultation, free consultation of up to 30 minutes with John. This is one prize, and another is 30 minutes consultation with myself, where we can talk about these points from this webinar or anything else that you are interested in. So you can also learn more about John. There is an email link for him, and of course, if you want to reach out to the LegalTrek team and say hi and see how we can help you, you have a link, to schedule a demonstration, a consultation, and we will be reaching out shortly. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been lovely to spend time with you. John, I thank you so much. And
my pleasure. Thank you.
Hope to catch up soon. Take care.
Indeed. Likewise. You too. All the best, Ivan.
Bye-bye.